Yeah, man. Thanks. Fucking hate that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Um,
All right. I'm just
yeah,
trying
and
to figure out this
both,
YouTube thing real
both,
quick.
both, you, Nick, and also Philip, you've both stood for election.
True.
That was another 2013 stunt. I ran for the Patriarchy Party. Um, I
Maybe you should try that again in Kabul.
oh well,
Man, that was too soon.
the the so yeah, I ran for city council, claiming that we would institute the patriarchy of feminist imagining, and saying, like, obviously we live in a patriarchal society, so I'm going to take away women's right to vote. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And you're all going to vote for me, right? Like, my qualifications are angry, white, heterosexual, and and they were the pamphlets that we made had my face, and they were very professionally done up, and they were
They're
done by Alex.
beautiful. They're really beautiful.
Yeah, I got drunk last year and left them at a bus stop, so I have none left. But I know.
I was always hoping I'd come into inheritance of one of them.
Oh well, fuck. Oh
maybe
well,
Karen's got one.
Yeah, well, I'll get someone to print more off, but they're yeah, they're good stuff. But yeah, I would like to have more to hand out to people, because that was just brilliant. But yeah, Vernon, never
Hello.
good. Pleased to meet you.
Pleased to meet you too. I've been wanting to talk to you at some point, and now we can.
Right on.
So let me figure this out. I'm just kind of figuring out how to do this kind of stuff in real time. This is the first time I've streamed on YouTube before, so yeah, my heart's racing like a lot, because I just got done with a ICMI interview. So
yeah, well, Philip, do you want to talk a little bit just before we go live about your run for election?
So I ran for the Scottish Family Party. Our vision for a better Scotland.
yeah, I think we're live, by the way.
Can I just like jump in to explain? I'm not sure if Vernon and Nick know, like, Scotland is fucked. Like, the UK is bad, but I mean, this not the SFP, the SNP, the Scottish National Party, who are running the show, like, they define themselves as a feminist party, and they're fucking absolute cunts.
Yeah, they're awful.
Yeah.
Scotland's way ahead of.
They have.
Wait.
Yeah.
White. Exactly, and it's not just bad for men, but I would say it's bad for everybody, including mothers, to be honest, because they tried something called the named person scheme, where every child has an official government representative. So it's literally, in some ways, it's really like the government spying on families through the children. It's not
which has been done.
Yeah.
And what was I going to point out? I can't remember. I got distracted. I wanted to show you before we start. Right. Weird thing happened. One of my service users, I went and met him for the first time. Fucking, he's Scottish, actually. Robert. Very lovely bloke. And he told me literally his entire life story. And his wife's. It was fucking proper good yarn. And then he mentioned that, like, his wife had passed away not so long ago, and him and his daughters had been through all of her stuff, and they'd put it out the front garden for people to take, but no one had taken anything. And I was like, oh, I'll have a look. And I took a couple of things, and there was like this box, like a Chinese box. It's quite pretty. And when I opened it, it was full of embroidery thread. and I was like, fucking jackpot. And I used to do cross stitch when I was like a little kid, and so I decided I wanted to do a cross stitch, and I was looking for a cross stitch pattern for the Sacred Heart, because I really like Sacred Hearts, man. And I couldn't find a cross stitch pattern for it, not for free anyway. So I just started looking up like art pictures of it, so I could, and I thought I'd draw it onto the Ida, which is the fabric you sew onto, and then sew over it, which is a fucking good idea. But while I was looking at pictures of Sacred Hearts, I stumbled across the Hamster, which is like a hand with an eye. And it's a Middle Eastern symbol, and the Jews claim it, the Christians call it the hand of Mary, the Muslims call it the hand of Fatima. And I drew it onto the fabric. This is like a week and a half ago, and I've been working on it. I'm quite proud of it.
Nice.
Wow, awesome. Beautiful.
And then fucking shit, man, like Afghanistan happened. And I'm sitting on the bus between visits, like sewing, thinking, this is so weird that I started sewing this symbol that Afghanis would fucking recognize. And like, I've been glued to the news. It's really fucking disturbing. And I wanted to, yeah.
I think you're emotionally already preparing for a new age of patriarchy.
But I wanted to fucking give something to the cause, like to help people, because, you know, I mean, I saw some fella on the news said that like the Taliban have 20% approval rating over there, and I'm like, fuck, man, 80% of people there are fucked. And so I wanted to donate some money, but I'm skint. So I asked Neil Linden if he thought like I could auction that off for any money. And he said, well, like, how much would you want for it? And I was like, pushing 100 quid, man. And he's bought it for 100 quid. He's donated to a GoFundMe for victims of Taliban attacks.
Holy shit.
Which I hope isn't going to end up in the hands of the Taliban.
Yeah.
I'm quite split on that, because I don't know anymore what's good and evil, and I'm wondering if our society might actually be the cancer in the world, and maybe we deserve to be destroyed, at least for a while.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, I think there's definitely evil on both sides there, and I mean, between us kind of prediction is that we've fucked up so bad, despite the fact that we've had everything going for us, all the fucking thinking that we need, but we've fucked it up so badly that our civilization is very much on borrowed time. And, you know, the wolves at the door are the Islamists, and they're going to bring in a fucking dark ages. And, you know, long term, I think that the work that the likes of us are doing, or I hope that the work that the likes of us are doing, in addition to all the great works of liberal philosophy, will win the day. But
what if liberalism is the wrong way?
It's not, man. Like, you know, men are born with inalienable rights.
Why? The thing is, I mean, things move in waves, and it did not take us very long to fuck up everything. I mean, we don't even know what male and female is anymore. I mean, like it's not easy to fuck up everything so badly that you push children into changing their sex, and literally the thing is, Islam is not our biggest enemy. We are our own biggest enemy. We destroyed ourselves. And
Yeah, yeah,
and
I'd agree with
to be honest, it doesn't matter what system you have. After a while, this system will self-destroy, either because they use so much control that people are sick of it
Yeah.
and they take it down, or if you have no control, then people take themselves down. And I think that's where we are right now. It's always going to move from one extreme to the other. So
I don't think that it's lack of control that got us here. I think it's control. I think it's the school system that has made people so controllable, such self-managers, that that's how we got it. Like if it comes down from authority that you can change your gender on a whim, so be it. Right? If it comes down from authority that 2 + 2 = 5, boom.
Yeah.
It is.
Whereas, the libertarian mindset is that parents have a right to raise their children.
Yeah, like
Parents as a rule, I mean, there are a few who are fucking mad. Like most of them live in Brighton in our country.
The school system itself is it's I think it is illiberal. It is totally illiberal, and it is illiberalism that has gotten us here, not liberalism.
It was absolutely necessary, the school system in the Victorian kind of era, because children needed to be fed and parents needed to be in factories at this point.
Yeah, but they don't also, I mean, that's a childcare issue. You don't need to indoctrinate them on top of
it. Right.
I agree. I agree.
Problem is, we talk about, we need more control and we need more control or something like that, thinking that it's the lack of control that got us here. But the problem is that lack of control prevents us from actually making self-determination. And the extra problem is, self-determination includes self-defense, trying to pursue your own path, that kind of stuff. But that is mocked by every given collectivist that basically has all this power. And if it doesn't work, just take the insane approach and say, the insane is, if it didn't work, try it again. That's the definition of insanity. And maybe it was no control that got us here, so let's put more in there. So I think that's a really dangerous mindset to have, to say that it is actually liberalism that got us. I agree with Nick. So.
I don't know. I think.
But hang on. You're a Christian, and it is the Christian foundation of our society that has taught us that there is something sacred in every one of us, and that is where liberalism. That's the idea that liberalism was born from.
Yeah, but the thing is, in according to the Bible, it says "come as you are," but it doesn't say "stay as you are." The problem is that that you should strive towards more perfection, and there are rules in religion and something to move towards. But if you take away any kind of guidelines, what might benefit you as a person, then society will collapse. And
yeah, but I disagree that that's inherent to liberalism.
And also,
I think liberalism, our version of liberalism now, removed all virtues, or it inverted virtues.
I'm a throwback. Like I'm talking about classical liberalism.
Yeah, but it opened the door. But it opened the door for the destruction of itself.
But we would have destroyed ourselves through the calcification of tyranny if we had only had conservatives.
I completely agree. That's what I say. If you have control, then and it will become too much control, and people will rebel against it and destroy the system. And if you have not enough, okay, I'm gonna change the word control into guidance, or framework. If you don't have enough framework, and or shared reality, then society will collapse, and then something more rigid will come out of it. And
Well, yeah,
usually,
I mean, we can see.
usually it's totalitarian, which I'm not looking forward towards.
I'd like to say, if you're gonna change the word from control to guideline or shared reality, then yeah, there's no disagreement here. I mean, it's a purely semantic disagreement.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries. I was going to say, I mean, I also I listen to, I really like before I go to bed, I often listen to Proverbs, the book of Proverbs, and I like to listen to the Tao Te Ching, and they're remarkably similar, and I can see. I mean, I went from atheist when I was 15 to Christian, like fundamentalist Christian, when I was 15, and now I have more of a Lucy Jordan Peterson type Christianity, where it's all a metaphor, right? But
doesn't matter if he's up here or in here, right?
Well, what I can see is the discipline of because I always thought about, for years I thought about, and still do, that you'll be judged by judge not lest you be judged, and you will be judged by the measure that you judge others, right? And I learned to become, but I voluntarily took this on. There was no outside control telling me to think like this. I mean, I was threatened with hell, so that's kind of an external control. But anyway, I did. I can see that I measure pretty much everything I say. If I say something damning, and I'm quite a firebrand, if I say something very, very provocative to someone and accusatory, I've driven around it and made sure that I am not failing that same metric that I am applying. And I've conformed my thinking process to that principle, right? And I can see in others that they do not. I can, like, not everyone else, but a lot of people, and it's not just SJWs, not just feminists. A lot of people.
No, it's cultural.
Totally unfamiliar with, and not just my parents don't do this. I mean, it's a simple discipline to make sure that the person you're condemning, that you wouldn't fail the test that you're putting someone through.
It's the speck in your neighbor's eye.
I would challenge that, and I would say it's absolutely okay to criticize something in others that you're failing at, if you acknowledge that you're failing at it as well. If you say we shouldn't do that, like, I think you should probably look at yourself, and I know that because I'm failing at that myself as well. And
Roger Scruton said that we all fail to live up to our ideals.
Right. I think that's important. And if we criticize something in others, we criticize it in ourselves as well. But most people are not aware of that. I mean, there's a good reason why the things that usually most annoy us in others are things that annoy us in ourselves. So we just need that awareness. By the way, Vernon, what's the plan?
Well, I was streaming, but I had to
more
stop.
gin is my plan.
Kind of, what?
I said more gin is my plan. Excuse me.
All right, so I was streaming, but I stopped it because I don't know. It was giving me an error saying that I needed to choose some kind of, what do you call it? Different frame rate or something like that. I don't know. So I don't know. This might just be a recorded affair and not necessarily a stream, but I'm gonna try. Goodness knows.
Okay.
So.
How's your stress? How's your heart rate now, Vernon? Are you okay after the interview?
What now? Oh, it's no better. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just kind of focused on other things right now. Just a moment.
Sure.
All right.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, guidance-wise, you can see it in gender politics because, in the 70s, with a vengeance, feminists began their war on male domestic violence against women. And it's plummeted. Like, it is so fucking rare. Whereas it was a feature of a special, it was a feature of our societies back in the 70s and before. It was not uncommon. And, you see it in films in a sort of minor way, like, the hero slapping a woman across the face. You see that in films from the 60s, 70s, and before. But there has never been any sort of real committed campaign. Well, no, not. I'm sure there's been a real committed campaign, but it's never caught the public imagination that it's wrong for women to hurt men physically. And our teenage girls are like more violent than ever to their boyfriends these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do need guidance, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's wrong with this, like, or no idea what's wrong with me.
Vernon, don't worry.
Okay. We'll just record.
All good.
All right. Yep. All right. We'll just have a recording. I think there's at least two parties recording this stupid thing. Okay, but I'm kind of in a don't give a shit about anything kind of mood. Like, why don't you just complete your thought and we'll just post it. Yeah, we'll talk about anything.
How did so you've interviewed Tim Golditch and Laurie today?
Laurie and Melissa together, yes.
Is Melissa another one of the mums of falsely accused?
That's correct.
How did they go?
We had a great chat. Chris Vody's been excellent in working, and when we work together, we just been absolutely getting some great questions in and getting some great answers in as well. So everything is just perfect. I'm really excited to see what's going to come of this. We've already done. We talked to Brother K. That was a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just looking forward to the Q&As that would follow. So yeah, that's everything's going great. It's just
Hey Vernon, you got a drink?
All right, so I got Guinness Extra Stout.
Oh.
Yep. I actually used some of this in the chili I made yesterday. So yeah, that was pretty good.
You got some of your keto beers, Nick?
No, I don't. I was smoking a bong, but
all right, that passes.
Yeah.
What about you, Philip? What the fuck is that air freshener?
I'm a hairdresser. I'm in my hairdressing salon. It's just water. It's water.
It's actually
I thought it was solvent abuse for a second.
He's a bloody teetotaler.
He's not a bloody teetotaler, though. He drank a beer with me and Mike earlier. I saw him. I think it was a Tennant's, wasn't it?
It was a Tennant.
So Scottish.
Can I ask, because I'm not on Twitter anymore a lot, and so I wasn't aware of the Lauren Southern tweet debacle.
I wasn't till Nick said.
Right.
When
I'm not on Twitter at all, but Peter,
it was 3 days ago.
Just 3 days ago. Was this in any way in response to the shooting in where was it? Not Brighton.
Plymouth.
Plymouth. Was that in regards to the shooting in Plymouth?
It's not that I know of. I won't put it past her, but I don't think it was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
actually, based on the final tweet that she's just sent when she replied to me, I think it's just fucking, she's just being controversial. She's just being a provocateur to get attention.
Well, yeah,
Well,
she's backtracking to be sure, I think. Sorry, Nick, I spoke over you.
oh, go ahead. No, you go first. You go ahead.
Well, yeah, so this is the, it's not recording. Just a moment. It is recording. I'm just trying to figure out how this thing works. No, I'll just say it. So she just said, I'll be chatting with Rollo Tomasi about it tomorrow. I'll get into more details. FYI, Karen Strawn has always been lovely, hence why I've said most, not all. But here's, okay, so that's what she said, but here's why I still have a problem with it, aside from the fact that it's just backtracking. You know, she still said that most of the manosphere is bad, even though what the trolls she might be talking about are still fringes. You know, so that's
Shall we do a bit of an introduction?
All right. Okay. All right. So basically,
Or maybe we shouldn't, because our preamble was kind of interesting in itself.
yeah, right.
Well, how about an official
If you're,
introduction?
go on, you, Vernon.
Me? Okay.
You were starting, weren't you?
Well, I could. I mean, I want to hear from Nick after this, but so basically, this started with something that Peter Wright showed me, well, publicly, but he did show me. Lauren Southern basically tweeted, "Can't stand most of the manosphere. Why? Because I gave them the benefit of the doubt and got to know the community, and it's rotten inside and out. Get out while you can. Save yourselves, young men. Criticizing feminism is perfectly fine. You can do that without hating women."
Can we start the dissection?
Yes, do it.
Go on, Nick.
First point.
Yeah.
We were talking about semantic disagreements earlier. Now there is an article on AVFM published years ago called "Goodbye Manosphere." So AVFM distancing itself from the greater manosphere. Now that could be what Lauren has intentionally done here. By using the term manosphere and not MRM. So she is a very smart young woman. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt. That's possible. However, yeah, this also, it got under my skin. Maybe she's being a provocateur, and if she is, it worked.
Yeah, so I mean, clearly, because we're all here, but I became aware of this 3-day-old tweet when Nick sent it to me today, and it got under my skin, and I reread it, and I asked her to define the manosphere, because, you know, whereas, and I've spoken to this with other people, and, you know, I said, well, the manosphere is an umbrella term that very, very few people in anything that is generally described as the manosphere use. And people have said to me, like, yeah, but feminism is an umbrella term. And I'm like, yeah, but they self-identify as feminists. So what exactly the manosphere is and isn't, you know, I think we need to know before we can really understand what she's getting at.
I would say you're right, Nick. I would say, as far as I know, the main group that self-identifies as the manosphere are the organizers and participants of the 21 convention, which I will attend, hopefully, if they allow me into America in October. And I would say, even with that community, I think there is some very unnecessary and childish back and forth, and people like attacking each other online in these groups. But I would say it's the same with, for example, Paul Elam. You can view Paul as a very controversial and angry person, but if you actually talk to him, or if you really listen to him, what he has to say, it's not the case, and he is very well balanced. He just uses some strong words, A friend of mine, a woman, and she looked into the book from Esther Villar, The Manipulated Man, and every single sentence is absolutely outrageous. And she was shocked at every sentence. And then I dissected every sentence. And she was like, oh, actually, the way you say it, it makes a lot of sense. And I think there are a lot of very strong voices within the so-called manosphere that are very controversial, especially if you don't listen, if you don't ask, how they came to this opinion. To be honest, I don't blame people for thinking that the manosphere is toxic, because it can feel like that on the surface, and some behaviors of some people might actually be toxic, but I think you have to actually sit down with people or invest some time to understand where they're coming from. That's my take.
Oh, sure. Thanks for that, Philip. But so to kind of try my own hand at defining the manosphere, I would probably go ahead and define it as anywhere where men are as men.
Mhm.
So so take that into account, and let's kind of, pick apart what she says about her getting to know the community inside and out. And she says it's rotten inside and out. So
Yeah.
you mentioned these. What's up, Nick?
Sorry. Go ahead. I apologize. Keep going.
That's right. But the idea is that, trying to regain my train of thought here. Oh yeah. So we spoke of these controversial types, these fringes. Now you mentioned Paul Elam, but he's not only that we know that he's an actually really compassionate guy, he's probably one of the best representatives of the men's movement, and if you must, the manosphere. I don't think he likes that description of himself, but if anybody were to say a big representative of the manosphere, I don't know, some might say him. So that's a bit of a point of debate. But so, take these smaller fringe people and say that they represent what the manosphere actually is kind of irresponsible thinking, I would say.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, what I would say is that when I read her comments, and also the comments of Sydney Watson and Daisy Cousins. So Sydney Watson agreed that Lauren had summed it up, and that the manosphere is on the same level as radical feminism. And then Daisy Cousins agreed entirely with both of them. She went to war with the manosphere a couple of years ago. They are the most virulently vile, deluded, bitter people I've ever come across, right up there with contemporary feminists plus rape threats. And I think that certainly Sydney and Daisy, if not Lauren, who I have a question mark over now, given her tweet back to me that she's talking to Rollo Tomasi tomorrow, and my sort of reappraisal and question over whether she's actually just said a provocative thing in order to get some attention. I think certainly Daisy and Sydney are talking about people who come into the movement and they perhaps have been badly burned by women in their personal lives, and they see virulently anti-male culture, and they have the red pill rage, and they are angry, and I would say justifiably angry. And I would say that when people are angry, they don't necessarily word things in the most sensible way. And, as a woman in what might be described as the manosphere by some people, It's a label that I would reject, but you know, I know that people would place me within that. I have bumped into angry, who I presume are men. Certainly some of them will be. Maybe some of them are like feminists trying to make our community look bad. I don't know, but there are angry men out there, and I have responded to them with sensitivity and compassion, and they almost to a man have ended up apologizing to me, and some of them have become friends. And so it's like, and you know, also, I feel like with feminists in our culture, with women, with angry women, we forgive them with that reality TV bird or whoever she was who battered her boyfriend round the head with a lampshade and then committed suicide. There was a national outcry about how we should all be kind and not say bad things about domestic abusers, you know?
Right.
And with the suffragettes, they committed acts of terrorism and endangered hundreds, possibly thousands of lives. But we forgive them because they were justifiably angry. And yet with men, when they go onto Twitter and say something a bit rude about women, we're like, well, that's unconscionable. They're toxic. You know, get your sons out of that. What's that about?
Well, I think all three are women, and they, in some ways, they're not friends of feminism,
Uh-huh.
but they are still beneficiaries of gynocentrism, and I think they understand that our society is shit towards men to some extent, but I don't think they can understand the full extent. And in some ways, I don't blame either side, because they want to be, I'm going to use the lefty term, allies. They want to be allies to men, and they go in the right direction. But there are plenty of men that will say, but you don't get it. Some of your behaviors are part of the problem. And then they will obviously feel attacked and saying, hey, I'm trying something good here. And you're like, yeah, but you're not actually not really listening. So I think there will be a little bit of a negative, not echo chamber, but a echo loop, or how you
A
call
sort of
it.
spiral, perhaps.
Well,
Yeah, exactly.
Feedback loop.
Who's the I know there's Lauren Southern, Daisy Cousins, and who's the third one that piped up?
Sydney Watson.
Yeah, and I don't know much about Sydney Watson. I've never seen her stuff, but Daisy Cousins again, I see a good amount of her stuff, and she seems pretty fucking based to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's happened here, I think what's happened here is what has happened with Alex Jones and with Steven Crowder before. On Alex Jones had what's her name? Cassie J on his show. And so she told him all about how, you know, MRAs are maligned and all this, and he's all sympathetic. And then when Manassian went on his shooting spree, he all of a sudden called him an MRA. So called him an MRA, and you know, said that we were all misogynists, right? And so you see a guy who talks to Cassie J, knows about the men's rights movement, and then turns around and goes, well, they're all misogynists. This guy's clearly an MRA, and he buys into the bullshit even after he has been maligned himself. Steven Crowder has Karen on his show. Well, he used to have Karen on his show all the time, and then he goes on saying that he's not down with the MRAs. This was a few years ago. He's not down with the MRAs, and I think he called us perpetually aggrieved. which I mean, it sets it up so that if we complain about anything, then whoa, we're fulfilling a stereotype. Then we're yeah, right. But and I like Steven Crowder, and he has been the subject of a lot of maligning and has spoken out against maligning. And Lauren Southern wrote a book about not maligning people, about how a sheepdog becomes a wolf because he gets propagandized, so that he starts seeing someone who didn't do anything wrong as a villain. And so all these people who understand what cancel culture is, they don't seem to appreciate that the men's rights movement was dealing with it before there was a fucking term for it. Okay. And like, they're cool with us. They're cool with everything we stand for. But then at the drop of a hat, they all go, oh yeah, fuck those MRAs. They hate women.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Some switch turns in their fucking head.
Well, the anti-MRA position is the more profitable one, to be sure. If you kind of look at that marketplace of, the gynocentric, chivalric, on both sides, chivalric on both sides kind of mindset that, if you're standing up for the women, then you will be rewarded. And that's the kind of, impulse that men seem to keep on going, and in advocating to be on women's side. Say something about a woman, he must be against women. So that's the kind
Vernon,
of
Vernon, just very quickly, because they called it the manosphere, not MRAs, and right now we were talking about MRAs. So I think it's very important to highlight that they didn't say MRAs are vile, manosphere, and that's where Elizabeth's question is very important. How do you define it? How did they define it? And I don't think, Elizabeth, they gave any clarification. Is that correct?
No, there is no clarification. Presumably, when Lauren talks to Rollo Tomassi, she will clarify what she meant when she said manosphere. I was interested in what you said about them all being women and beneficiaries, therefore, of gynocentrism, though, because, what she also said was she followed up her tweet with one saying that there's absolutely nothing conservative about hating women or seeing them as objects. There's absolutely nothing Christian about it. Families are men and women working together, and Christianity is men and women loving each other. And, I think that I think there are conservatives and conservatives, and when I think of when I think of conservatism with a positive kind of glow, I think of Bill Whittle from the right angle when he said that conservatism is the conservation of liberal values, which I do think is appropriate today, because everyone who I believe to be upholding liberal values in the political sphere is a conservative. Maybe not absolutely everyone. There are a few politicians on the left who I think do uphold liberal values, in fairness. And I'm thinking of the Marxist Claire Fox, who's a baroness in the House of Lords, and I'm thinking of Kate Hoey. She's gone to the House of Lords as well now, hasn't she? She's not still in the Commons, is she, Philip?
I didn't check that. Sorry.
But they were both ardent Brexiteers, and they're good women who are very passionate about free speech and democracy. However, I think that there is a kind of social conservatism that is about pedestalizing women and keeping men as disposable and offering men gratitude, and that should be enough. And as a mother of sons, I think that's bullshit. It's absolutely not enough to offer my sons thanks.
Exactly. That's
Well,
the kind of
there
thing I was
are,
really trying to, push in my own message. It's like it's still disposability, no matter how much you think.
Yeah,
Great
yeah.
comfort. You're dead. How are you going to reap any of that? So, but I mean, that's kind of a simplifying of my position here.
But that I think is the conservatism that Lauren talks about when she says that. I mean, she says that hating women and treating them as objects is not conservative. I mean,
I think there is something conservative about treating women as objects in, well,
controversial.
controversial. So I would say that in the upper class from like 1900 onwards, and then in the middle class in the 50s and 60s, I think that women became um, uh, how do you call it, ornamental, representative. They were supposed to be pretty and nice to look at, and I do think that the role of women was turned into something that didn't add much to the relationship. And I think that had to do in many ways with industrialization. But I think I would call myself a tretcon, but I'm a tretcon. I go back. I would look more at 1700 or 1800, where men and women both had to work equally hard together, where I think the role of women and men was actually more equal because life was fucking hard. And I think the fact that life became much easier, and that people didn't have to work as hard anymore, actually reduced women to ornamental role, which in some ways is objectification. And I would say that, for example, Daisy Cousins, who is very ornamental, very pretty, and I think that is the kind of traditional conservative approach that they have, being where women think all they need to bring to a relationship is themselves. And I had that in my I'm going to make it very short. With my former girlfriend, I asked her very early on, what do you bring to this relationship? And I had a list of the things that I brought, like a house, a job, a car. And I asked, what do you have? And in the end, it was just herself. And I expect more, but to me, that is traditional conservative going back to 1800 something or 1700 something. Sorry.
Well, Daisy Cousins, I've watched a lot of her stuff, and she is not just a pretty face. I don't think she thinks that she has to just bring herself. I think she again very she's pretty based. I mean, when I hear her talk, like I think she's based and red pilled as fuck. I mean, she's got the royalist. She does have the royalist conservative makeup thing going on, but that's that's how she presents herself.
Don't get me wrong, I love her. I like actually all like I don't follow Lauren Southern a lot, but Daisy Cousins and what's her
Sydney
Sydney
Watson.
Watson. Yeah, I love both of them, and I love when I see Sydney Watson and Elijah Schaefer talking to each other in slightly offensive. And actually, that would be my suggestion. Elizabeth, I would suggest that you reach out to Elijah Schaefer with slightly offensive, and that he invites all other three women, and that you actually have a conversation about the manosphere. And then obviously they can invite more people, because Elijah has done that before with members of the LGBT community and members of the Christian community, and that might be a really interesting conversation. It would be interesting in the beginning with the four women, but you cannot have a conversation about the manosphere without man.
Sure you can.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I fully reject the feminist idea that not all feminists have, but a good number have, that men are not qualified to talk about women's issues, about feminism. They're not qualified to identify as a feminist. That's one of the reasons I left that movement. And therefore, you know, I don't think that anyone, by virtue of their chromosomes, has more authority to talk on the manosphere than I do.
Mm.
They may have virtue by, you know, the way of their experience or their intellect or their insight, but not because of what sex they are. But you know what? That was really interesting hearing you speaking then, Philip. Like, because I had an article published today, which I wrote ages ago, but it spoke to so many of your points, and it was um it was something I've been writing for a website called Woke Father, and the way we work is that we have these boards, and on one board we all like suggest ideas for articles, and then there are other boards where we can move that idea to our personal one because we want to write about that. And someone had suggested an article about the disparity between how much interest you see in the likes of Kendall Jenner, who, for anyone who is like me, is a Kardashian and an attractive woman with a vacuous personality, as far as I know. Um, and Alyssa Carson, who I've now got on my bedroom windowsill because she's really cool. She's the youngest person ever to complete all of the tests at NASA. She's due to go up with the first Martian cohort. She does say quite a few things on her Twitter account about women in STEM and stuff like that, but she's like 19, so I freaking forgive her. Um, and like, my take was that there is absolutely something that's very valuable in feminine beauty. And I absolutely endorse women pursuing beauty if that's their bag, in the same way that I endorse men painting, masterpieces and building and designing beautiful buildings. Those things are things that last, and they have this kind of price tags that prove how important beauty is to us as human beings. Whereas feminine beauty is hair and makeup and youth and handicrafts and stuff like that. And it's ephemeral, but it still brings us joy as human beings. However, I absolutely agree with you that at some point, and I'm not entirely sure whether I agree with your timeline, I would have to think more on it. But certainly at this point in our civilization, there are a lot of women who think that all they need to be valuable is to be pretty.
Mm.
And I don't think that's healthy. It's certainly not healthy for the men they're in relationships with. I don't think it's healthy for them because it's an unsustainable battle. Because whatever
And
you do,
obviously,
you are going to age, you know.
exactly.
Whereas if you start trying to cultivate your personality, your generosity, your compassion, your intellect, those things you can build, and you can be better at them at 60 than you were at 20.
Mm.
That's just not the case with beauty.
Is is it possible that Sydney and Daisy and Lauren, that they, okay, sorry, I have to go back. Um, I'm from Germany, and 8 years ago, we had the big migration, the start of the migration crisis. And a friend of mine who had never had anti-immigration views and was never like racist or something like that, started to say some pretty shocking things to me about, oh, now the city is full of non-Germans and there are a lot of thefts going on. And I was shocked. So what I did was I went back to Germany. I sat in my old hometown, and I took 2 days to just sit and watch people. And everything he said was true. All the problems with the drug dealers and theft in shops, all of that was true. But the vast majority of non-white people in the city were just going shopping, and were lovely families, but your eye doesn't, or your brain doesn't see them because they don't cause any problems. It's the same when you walk down the street, and there are a lot of people, you don't really notice them, but if there are four guys, young guys that are a bit louder, maybe look like football fans, you notice them and you're like, oh man, dangerous. And is it just possible that these three women, Lauren, Daisy, and yeah, thank you, that they had really negative experiences with people that claim to be from the manosphere or that are from the manosphere, and these are the ones that stood out. These are the ones that were the most shocking. And I would not blame them for then thinking that's the movement, because you ignore the ones that are actually pleasant or neutral.
Well, hold on. She when she first came to prominence, when she did the Vancouver Slut Walk in 2015, she went on Paul Elam's channel. Okay, he interviewed her. Then she came out to Edmonton to do the Edmonton Slut Walk with me and a guy that I used to do Men's Rights Edmonton with, and that was all very cordial. I filmed her, and she stayed the night at Karen Strawn's house. What part of the manosphere is going to overshadow that in terms of significant experiences?
I was part of the LGBT community for a very long time. I was representing the LGBT community, and I was working in the gay porn scene. And I would say that almost all my experiences were positive. But when I started dating women again, I got quite a bit of negative stuff online from members of the LGBT community. And now I'm very hostile towards the LGBT community. And I think I treat many of the people that were very nice to me in the past in some ways unjustly. I still like them as people, but I would say that I brush the LGBT community very negatively and probably unjustified. So as we said in the conversation before, maybe we shouldn't call out things in other people that we do ourselves sometimes. And I can very clearly say that I do that with the LGBT community and some other communities. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just recently started reading Schopenhauer, and he, writing, 150, 200 years ago or something, talked about how things with a positive aspect we don't notice, and things that don't work out as we hope we focus on. And that is a human trait, and it's something that drives us forward to progress, but it's also something that makes us miserable.
Well, all of this, we wouldn't be asking any of these questions if she had responded to me on any
No.
of the media. Any of the
She did
media that
respond to you. She responded to you when she responded to me, I think.
she responded to my question, which was
Yes.
about Karen, but not to
Yes.
me, to you,
Yes.
which is fucking weird.
It is fucking weird because she's worked with you.
Yes, and not you. I'm like, I
No.
identified it like we've worked together. She will not acknowledge me, right? So I mean, I didn't do anything to her. I never said a word against her. When a lot of people were talking, when it was fucking fashionable for people to talk trash about her, I always resisted that because I don't like it when people. I hate seeing that when that comes along. When someone gets singled out and everybody hates them for no good fucking reason, which is what happened to her. I think she made a big mistake working with Cowell and Robertson, but yeah. So
I mean,
anyway,
yeah, the mistake I think she made, what put me off her, um, was her thing that, as far as I know, she's still into. I've stopped watching her since she gave a speech about how the number of sexual partners a woman has is a causation. You know, if she has more, then she has less ability to have a successful relationship, which I think is not supported by the evidence and is completely confusing correlation and causation. It's like what women are having a load of random sexual encounters. They are not, they are from certain demographics and it's not the sex.
And the other way around. I mean, women or people that only have one sexual partner usually come from a religious background
Exactly.
and live within a religious framework that makes it
Exactly.
very, very difficult to leave a relationship. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to bring up,
But I mean, I never particularly went for her over that because I don't think there's not a huge amount. If someone asks me, I will tell them that I disagree with that, but I don't feel any particular need to broadcast that that's stupid because I don't think it's entirely dysfunctional to believe, really, given all the dysfunctional things that people do believe. And but yet she has felt the need to come out saying that she can't stand most of the manosphere. And
Do we know? Do we know what? Do we know what the reason was? What the initial reason was to tweet that?
I don't really care, actually. It's like, so to answer your thing about perhaps not being so critical, Philip, because you talked about your misgivings, possible misgivings you had about the LGBT community based on your experience with them. I still think it's fine to call out things are wrong, right? And especially if it's in when it manifests itself in self-defense, which I think we're practicing self-defense here, not just as MRAs, but supposedly this manosphere, as they call it. So in that context, I do think that it's still okay that we're calling out a mistake, because if we can't call out a woman for its mistake, then we're just giving women a pass. And I think we've had enough of that.
Yeah, I not for a second I would suggest that we should let this slip, but I think we should we should understand why it happened in the first place. That's why it's important to know why she tweeted that. And I would invite, which obviously Elizabeth you did, and Nick apparently you as well, inviting an open debate and asking, oh, who do you mean? Why is that? And pretty much saying, look, if you had really like aggressive people writing to you, that's awful. That's really bad. But you should know from your past experience that a lot of people within the manosphere and men's rights activists are very, very good people. And that is the case for every single one of the areas of the manosphere, be it MRA, incel, like 21 convention. There are great people everywhere, and there are some real dickheads everywhere, because you find dickheads absolutely everywhere. That's just how it is.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, I wanted to finish up on the Schopenhauer point by saying that's supported by modern psychological research, which shows that, you know, it's more painful to lose $10 than it is joyful to earn $10. Like, that is just, you're absolutely right. The negative experiences for human beings are right at the forefront of our minds and whatever. And I want to, you know, again, just push back slightly on your point about there being dickheads everywhere. There are dickheads everywhere, but I think within the manosphere, if we are to define it as a loose umbrella collective of people who are unsatisfied with men's social conditions, social situations, social standing in our modern Western societies, which, you know, I'm putting a pun that she might be meaning. I think that there is a justified anger there, and I think that if women were in the same situation and had the same disadvantages that men do, we might also tweet some angry things to women that weren't always justified, and that actually, had Lauren, Daisy, and Sydney responded with a little bit of understanding, they might have found that those dickheads weren't actually total dickheads.
But everything you said just now could be said about feminists, because I would say that feminism was predominantly born from women that had just cause to be upset, not on behalf of their gender maybe, but personally. I think that most feminists that started the movement were probably abused or were internally broken in some ways, that they had reason to complain, and they and yeah.
I fully agree with you, man. And like, I think I have some sympathy for feminists.
I take issue with what you're both saying. I have take issue with what you're both saying. Yeah, there are jerks in every movement. But the thing is, whenever people talk about the jerks in the men's rights movement, and I know that Lauren Southern didn't, she didn't say men's rights movement. She said manosphere, but it is a term that is associated with the men's rights movement. And when I asked her to clarify who she meant, she said, "Well, it'll happen tomorrow," instead of you know, and you know, not to me, but she was a producer on Steven Crowder before, right? So she's been in the company of people who have done this. I've taken issue with Steven Crowder, again, having Karen Strawn on his show and then throwing MRAs under the bus. And there's always the same mentality that I encounter with people who do this. In fact, I encountered it with Shoe on Head years ago, before she fell from grace with the shitlord community. She and her boyfriend were sitting around shitting on MRAs. And then I made a video saying, "Hey, when have you ever been mistreated by MRAs? You know, you've been on Honey Badger Radio. Every MRA I know loves you. You know, what the fuck are you talking about? And then they fall back to, oh, you know, the MGTOW. That's what I meant. Oh, MGTOW, right?
Well,
They're the really bad ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, the thing is, even while we're talking about the the manosphere and the men's rights movement, even MGTOW, I don't think the majority is so bad. You know, it's just
No,
I agree.
I've had my own pretty high public dispute with Barbarossa back and forth back in the day,
Okay.
and you know, I made it very clear that, I mean, I don't think they hate women. That was not the nature of the dispute. But yeah, even but I hate it. I hate when they go, and the thing is, it's all these same people. They all have the same, when they cast aspersions on the men's rights movement, and you call them, you say, can you give us one example? An example, right? Because even if you look at We Hunted the Mammoth, they used to, David Futrell used to write articles about me every fucking week, every other week. And now he writes articles. I go there all the time. He writes articles about some random guy in a red pill forum said here, or a random guy in a MGTOW forum said here, or someone he's associating with the men's rights movement, right? You look at the misogynist thing they said, but it's total randos, right? Rather than looking at the leaders. And with the feminist movement, you can look at the randos and they all say crazy shit, and you can look at the leaders and they all say crazy, hateful shit too. Okay, it's not the same. You know, like, it's not the fucking same. And and you know, when these people, when they talk shit about the men's rights movement, ask them to give an example. Like, be like, would you be so kind as to furnish us with an example? And they fall back to, again, every group has its bad actors. You can't say there are none. I'm not saying there are none. Show me who they are, right? And you know,
Nick, Nick, here's an example. We had this shooting in Plymouth a couple of days ago, and the poor guy who shot the people and shot himself, he apparently, well, he mentioned incels. He didn't call himself an incel. He just mentioned incels, and now everybody's ragging on incels. And in my organization, Gender Parity UK, I said, oh, we have to contact the media and say and set the record straight. And the majority of people in my group said, hands off, don't defend the incels because it's a hot topic. And I was like, sorry, I'm still gonna
I contacted my media contacts, and I asked to talk to them, and I asked to talk to them with Richard Orrit, who I had at Messages for Men, who is an incel.
Exactly. But what I wanted to say is that even people that should know better, people that are being shit on by the media, will then believe the media lies about just the guys next door that are part of the same movement that are being slandered, and they're like, oh, we're the good guys, but I heard these are the bad guys. And then the next group is just being shat on and shat on, instead of we all defending each other and saying, hey, for example, I can't say too much about the incel community because I'm not part of it, but I talked to some of them, and they were just the loveliest people that I can imagine. And I'm like, sorry, don't shit on incels, because I know some, and I will not let you call them terrorists.
Yes, we should be correcting people when they talk that shit, but we should also be aggressive in correcting people when they talk shit about MRAs, and we're not. We have fucking battered wife syndrome so many of us, when it comes to politics. Oh, this conservative said some nice things about us. It's okay that they turn around and fucking humiliate and mock us in public afterwards, and they all buy into the same lies, even though they were just supporting us last week. That's fine. As long as we have this mentality, this bitch-made mentality, it's going to keep happening.
Right. Like, I wanted to kind of, that's terrific insight. I kind of wanted to bring up something that's just reminding me of, like, you know, a few years back, Paul Elam got like a lot of backlash for criticizing Christina Hoff Sommers for some really I mean, that was a pretty eye-opening experience for me when I saw that video. But before, I was completely equity feminist whore, right? Like I tried, I followed the Camille Paglias and the Christina Hoff Sommers people, and I thought that no, they're saying it, so maybe it's okay to kind of care, but I shouldn't be so loud. But I grew out of that for good reason. But before that, I would have probably not liked what Paul would have said. Oh, she's our ally. Why are you saying this kind of thing? But so it's a good thing I saw it later. But but it's like, yeah, Paul got a lot of hate from even MRAs and manosphere people. But she's our ally. Stop burning bridges and stuff. But these are things that had to be said about her, right?
Yeah.
So I really completely support Paul.
Yeah, and
but the question is, I'm so sorry, but the question is, should these things be said publicly, or should, for example, Paul Elam, could he, and I didn't read I didn't watch the video, could he reach out to her personally and say, look, this is actually wrong and really damaging. Can you clarify that? And if she doesn't clarify it, then say, look, sorry, but yeah.
Don't you think that would be cheating the public out of some intellectual stimulation? Like, don't we have the right to hear public intellectuals and public figures say, go through their disagreements in public, in the same way that, for example, Jordan Peterson went through when he spouted off about MGTOW in a way that was way beyond his experience, and then people pushed back and he publicly changed his mind. Go on, Nick.
It's not like Paul exorciated Christina Hoff Sommers, right? He just made it clear that her agenda was not that of the men's rights movement, that she was cynically appealing to women's self-interest, helping men for the sake of women, which I don't necessarily see anything wrong with. But it's just making it very clear, like, her agenda is not our agenda. Like, that's what it was. And fucking Milo got pissy with him, and fucking Christina Hoff Sommers, brought it up years later at a convention to them all MRAs. Like, fuck that bitch.
So I got to follow up if So with regards to talking to hypothetically talking to Christina Hoff Sommers, like in private, and confronting this kind of thing, this very well could have happened if we really expected a sort of an answer, because I have very big reason to believe that she would not have bothered with this kind of stuff, because here's my experience being a fanboy of Christina Hoff Sommers. So it was like late 2019, I would think. I was following her podcast called Femsplainers at the time, right? Mm-hmm. And so basically, oftentimes they have good guests and stuff like that. They talk, they pay some lip service to men here or there. There were some parts that got really stupid and gynocentric, but there was this one episode that
I know what it's going to be.
Yeah, you know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
They were talking about Aaron Pitsey, right? Yeah. And they were kind of talking about, there was a short segment in an episode where they talked about Aaron Pitsey as a forgotten feminist, right? So basically talked about some of the great things she did and how she was unjustly treated and basically ousted from the UK, if I got that part right. But then goes to say that now she's involved in the men's movement and with Voice for Men, and that's going a bit far, and so there was some like right after they said they were criticizing the airbrushing of her from the feminist movement. They airbrushed her for being in the men's movement, and so I'm the biggest idiot here. And before I've emailed them compliments about good conversations they've had on previous shows, right? But after this episode, I sent them a very polite, long message about this was this was incorrect. You've got so many details wrong. You know, being part of the men's movement is not going too far, you know. And, you know, so, you know, maybe you should actually speak to people in the men's movement about it, that kind of stuff. You know, before when I was writing praises with them, they would say, "Thank you for enjoying the episode, Vernon." But this I had to this date not received a response to. So to answer your question, I don't think it would have been worthwhile for Paul to just talk to Christina Hoff Sommers directly.
I think that it does make a difference if somebody, no offense to you, of course, Vernon, but I think it can make a difference how wide a person's reach is when they reach out to another person who has a wider reach. So maybe Paul Elam would have had enough weight behind him.
He has
Oh,
he
no,
has
I've
enough
got a
weight behind him.
friend.
He has enough weight behind him for her to mention, right? Which she did.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen footage of her, you know, and Karen Strawn hanging out at a Gamergate thing years ago. Sorry, I got distracted by a thing on my computer. You know, Karen drank the champagne that Christina Hoff Sommers didn't want. You know, in true Karen. You know, and they sat around bullshitting and had a gay old time. And that's you know, so it's not like she doesn't know who Paul Elam is. You know, she'll talk about him, but not to him. And I mean, I guess the same is said for Paul, can be said for Paul Elam, but again, he wasn't denounced. I don't think he denounced Christina Hoff Sommers. And besides, he was. I'll just come back to my initial statement. He was important. He had enough weight behind him for her to mention in public like that. So, yeah.
I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Hamster into the conversation.
Hello, how are you?
Hello,
Hey,
dear.
Hamster.
I'm very well, all the better for hearing you.
Well, thank you very much. Likewise. Good to
Are
see
you
you.
the guy that has those hamster spontaneous videos and that podcast with well, not podcast, but that interview with Elizabeth that one time?
Oh yeah. We me and Lizzie did something. What did we do, Elizabeth?
We had a chat and it was lovely, actually. And actually, you personally proved my point.
Oh God.
Because
this might be bad. Go ahead.
I mentioned earlier, you know, Lauren Southern as well as Daisy Cousins and Sydney Watson are talking about this toxic manosphere and how they're all so bloody horrible and all of this. And I suggested that perhaps.
I'm sorry. I gotta go. Hamster, I don't mean to leave as soon as you get here. You seem like a really nice guy.
Cool. Yeah.
And V for Vernon, if you can get in touch with me later, but I'm sorry, I gotta go. Sorry to jet out, but have a good night, guys.
All right.
Yeah, no problem. Good to see you.
Nick.
Seeing you.
See ya.
In a while. Yeah, I suggested that, you know, because we discussed the possibility that perhaps they had been subjected to not very nice comments from people who they might describe as being in the manosphere. And we have asked them what exactly the manosphere is, because we don't know many people who self-describe as being in the manosphere, but we're assuming it's us lot. And I suggested that perhaps if they had spoken and responded back to the people sending them not very nice comments with some sensitivity and awareness that perhaps they were justifiably angry, and spoken to them like human beings, they might have got a good response. Because when I first bumped into Hamster, you weren't very nice to me, were you? Do you remember?
What are you saying? That's not true.
It so was true. You were not very nice to me, and then we ended up having a really, really bloody good conversation.
I certainly thought so. Yeah.
And I would count you as something of a friend at this
me
point.
as well. Yes. Yeah. I would agree. Yeah, it's been a while since I heard from you, but good to see you again, and always welcome on my channel, and maybe on your channel I can come sometime.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool, great.
I need to get some more gin. Why don't you give your sort of take on the issue? I'll be listening.
Excuse me, what time is it in England, you guys? Is it like midnight or 1 o'clock? Or
Past
1:36.
1:36. God, I gotta love the English, right? Hey, I gotta have another gin, damn it. Let's go. So yeah,
where are you based, Hamster?
St. Louis, Missouri.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I just moved here for a new job, so yeah. It's not bad. I mean, it's nice. It's hot. I I don't know where you are, Vernon, or Phillip.
Well, right now I'm in St. Paul, Minnesota, but by New Year's we'll be moved back to Florida.
Florida. I grew up as a kid in Florida. Son of a bitch, it's hot down there. My God.
Oh yeah, it is. Actually, well, my family, we moved from Japan to Florida, and I'm a U.S. citizen born abroad, and so I grew up till like teenage in Japan. Then we moved to Florida, and because we were going to anyway. So I spent teenhood and college there in Florida. So
yeah, I was actually in Japan for a job trip. Really interesting place. I thought it was pretty cool, actually.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the place where everybody wants to go visit. Do I want to live there again? I don't necessarily know if that's great for me, but I'll go back to visit. We just never had a chance to.
But so what are the obstacles, I guess, for living in Japan that you think?
Well, so I'm half Caucasian, right? My mother's Japanese, my dad's American Caucasian. And the thing about Caucasians is that they will never basically be accepted as Japanese, if they're living there. So right, so that's like a big thing. I mean, they're nice enough to you, but there's so it's like you will not feel natural there, and I look, I don't even know what I look. Do I look Japanese or American or what? I don't know. I look freakish, but like
well,
but it's I don't know.
Vernon, I would say that you look like one of the band members of Mono, so I would say that you are Japanese passing.
Okay.
It's a Japanese post-rock band that I admire. So.
Oh, I think Mono.
That's easy for a German to say.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, he's a German. Yeah.
Ah.
Voice the Hut. Yeah.
I can speak a little bit more like that, and then I'm the German representative here in the podcast.
Well, now you sound like Colonel Lambda. I mean, come on.
Who is Colonel Lambda?
He is in Inglourious Bastards. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
He's a good guy. Actually, he's a really good actor. But go ahead.
I didn't like that movie very much because it really did hurt my German sensitivity.
So Vernon, I mean, is it the American occupation of Japan that people are pissed in Japan about that, or you think?
No, actually, here's the thing about the American occupation in Japan, as well as the bombing. I had a conversation with an American that's actually living there. His name is Voluntary Japan on YouTube, anyway, and so basically he said that a lot of Japanese are kind of some of them may be kind of they aren't fond of it, but others are kind of like oh, we deserved it, or we deserve to be blown to bits, and had the Americans occupy us or something like that. So I don't know. There's kind of like a lack of esteem happening over there, to be sure. But it's not really that's kind of they're kind of, well, I mean, the thing is, like, even the Asians hate the Japanese. That's the big problem. It's like the Chinese hate the Japanese, the Koreans hate the Japanese. Goodness knows everybody hates the Japanese, but it's like so I don't know. Maybe they're a bit defensive, I guess, if it happens. But I don't know. For the most part, it's like just the feeling, and this is not unique to the Japanese. It's more. I think it's a very Asian phenomenon that if you're not of their nation, you just don't belong. You have to be scrutinized one way or another, or something like that. That's the vibe I get from it anyway. And I'm sorry to go off on this thing, but in terms of culture, it's not terribly individualistic. There are some individualistic things about it that even beat the Americans, but it's not really on the surface. There's a lot of commitment to collectivism, duty, and just that kind of idea of just going with the flow, fitting in, do what you're told. Is that kind of the guy I spoke to, Voluntary Japan, told me that something that's really baffling. There's no lockdown technically in Japan. It's just that people just want to kind of have good PR for themselves, and they follow the mask guidelines, that kind of stuff for a recent lock, what. And so, yeah, that's the kind of thing, if you're not wearing a mask, they will kind of look at you weird, and, that kind of thing. So I don't know if that answers your question, Hamster, but.
Well, I mean, that's kind of been normal for like Japan and Asia, right? They wore the mask and all that stuff. But I mean, certainly, Vernon, you understand why the Koreans and the Chinese would be pissed at Japan, right?
Well, I mean,
not a good history. Not a good history.
They haven't had a good history, but the thing is, it's been a back and forth. Like the whole rape of Nanking thing. That's like not the thing that started it off. There's been conflicts back and forth all the time. So it's kind of weird to just point rape of Nanking as like, Japanese are the devil just because, or something like that. So and there've been apologies despite the others saying there hasn't been. So I don't know. I don't want to get into the whole Asian politics thing here at all, but that's my take on it.
No, I understand. But I mean, the Japanese were not very friendly. Not today's Japanese, but 70 years ago, they were not good. It was a bad kind of scene. I think you would agree. Everybody would agree, I think, right?
With the Japanese government, sure. Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty bad time. Yeah, but even the Japanese suffered for it. So
I did read a really good book by Robert Harris and Jeremy Paxman called The History of Chemical and Biological Warfare. And I think that if you were going to be, a guinea pig for chemical and biological weapons, the last place you would want to be was Second World War Japan. Was that what you were referring to, Hamster?
No, I'm saying that as Vernon brought up the rape of Nanking, where you don't even want to talk about it. It was really bad. But during World War II, the Japanese went into Korea, and there was, the comfort women, right? They basically kidnapped women to, you can imagine, right? Wasn't good. And so I understand there's some animosity there. But again, it's, 70, 80 years later, so.
Right.
What are you drinking
the
there?
Thing is, it's like most of what manifests hate now is the relative success that Japan's had up until recent points, I think. I know some would say that, but but then again, South Korea is kind of picking up speed on that in that respect.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that too.
I have to say it's really nice to be the German in the group and not to be dunked on in a conversation about Second World War. I'm like, wow, a Japanese is there, and all of a sudden,
dude. If you read the history of chemical and biological warfare, it was you lot. It was Hitler who saved us from going into a full-scale chemical and biological war in World War II. Churchill wanted to do it. Churchill had an island off Scotland, which is out of bounds because they were testing chemical and biological weapons there.
Yeah, it was,
and it's wrecked.
Was it Milzbrand?
I can't remember. You said it in German as well.
Oh yeah. and you still can't touch the island. I think it's completely fucked.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But Churchill had experienced the effects of mustard gas, or he'd at least seen it, and he was like, of all the things that I would do, I won't do that. Meatloaf style.
But I mean, the interesting part about that, Liz, is Hitler as well. He was gassed in the face and all that crap. World War I.
Was he actually gassed in the face?
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think maybe there was like rumors he was gassed in the face, but maybe he kind of, you know, played that up a bit and actually just saw people. But
Yeah,
regardless of whether he was or not, we can thank him for generations, because it was more than one generation going to war without significant lung problems.
I'll be right back.
The British
You guys,
government, by the way, would not have compensated them for based on their uh, behaviour after World War One.
I'll be right back. Be sure to talk shit about me when I get back.
Well, I don't know. I was thinking about that
I'm gonna
five-string
take,
bass in the
I'm,
background there. I don't know. That looked pretty chunky, but go ahead. Sorry.
I'm gonna take the conversation from past human atrocities to current human atrocities and Afghanistan.
Yes.
And what I find very interesting at the moment is this obsession about women's rights in Afghanistan, where apparently, as far as I know, boys and men have been separated, taken out of the villages and shot, while the women and girls were left alive. And of course, everything is about women's rights again.
Again,
Because the women might be and that's horrible, might be forced into marriage with men that potentially shot their husbands or something like that. This is all hearsay, of course, but the fact that the men and boys that were shot are not seen as casualties or human rights violations, yeah.
yeah.
No, I
Well,
don't think
More
that's
of
an
the same.
option though. I mean, that's Sharia law, right? This is serious shit.
Mhm.
Or am I wrong? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's
well,
serious
I
shit.
was just
But
gonna.
I would say it's serious shit that the men and boys are being shot, and I would say it's serious shit that the West completely ignores that and only
Yeah,
talks about the fact that
Yep.
yeah,
girls can't
yeah.
get
Well,
an
it's
education.
we are calling it still at this point
Yep.
at least a potentially peaceful transfer. And yet
Oh
we've
my God.
seen battalions of the Afghani army giving themselves up, surrendering themselves, and all being massacred by the Taliban.
Exactly. Yep.
Like, I don't know. I must have a weird definition of peaceful.
Yeah. The thing is, Lizzie, nobody gives a shit about the boys and the men. We all know that. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, because have I got makeup on my nose? I just noticed. I don't know if I do or if it's just shadow. Um, I have been a bit obsessed with watching footage of this conflict because in my job I kind of have to get out on time. So I shove on Sky News because it's got a clock in the corner. And this hit like, a week ago. And every time I've been in, I've gone straight to the TV and just been drinking in the absolute tragedy of what's going on. And I watched maybe minimum 3 hours, possibly 4 hours of the debate in Parliament the other day. And like a third of the MPs really did focus on how awful it was going to be for women and girls. And
But
I mean,
it's just
it's a
but
thing to mention,
Oh,
sure. And
there's no
like,
question
there
about that. Yeah.
was a hilarious moment where some ambassador for like NATO or the UN or something was in Washington and he was going like, yeah, but I mean, the Taliban say that it's going to be an inclusive state.
yeah, that was
And then
funny.
some
It
female
was
journalist
hilarious.
said, are there going to be female representatives in their government? And he was
No.
like, it's going to be an inclusive state. And I was like, yeah,
Right.
right, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The Taliban definition of inclusive. you know, as everyone burns their jeans and t-shirts for fear of them being found, it's like,
Yeah,
come
we
on.
include everyone in our oppression. We include everyone. We
Yeah,
include all, you know, we won't miss out on anyone, you know.
yeah. You know, so
Yeah, but
the
on the
women and
other,
girls question is a question, but it's not
but on
a third of the debate.
What's up,
yeah.
Phil?
Uh, I just wanted to mention that their definition of diversity as bullshit as our definition of diversity. So there is no diversity in the Taliban leadership, and there is no diversity in our supposed diversity.
Yeah, no, you're
But
absolutely right. They have like no diversity in terms of very arbitrary, irrelevant factors like where your genes are at. And we have no diversity intellectually.
absolutely, absolutely. But what we're seeing now with everything focused on women's rights in regards to Afghanistan is, I found it very, very shocking in the last year that I really focused on, for example, in the UK, the domestic abuse bill and all of this. And I really saw something ramping up when there was a woman who was killed in London by a police officer. Sarah Everhart.
Yep.
And
Yes.
her death was immediately instrumentalized by the feminists, and it felt like they were just waiting for this to happen as a feminist George Floyd incident, and they immediately used it for the domestic abuse bill, even though it has nothing to do with domestic abuse, and they used it in every debate, and for the violence against women and girls strategy. And so there was a consultation, for example, about the new violence against women and girls strategy. That consultation was closed. Shortly after it was closed, Sarah Everhart was killed, and the consultation was opened again. And where it was 10,000 people that answered the consultation before, with something like 15%, if I remember correctly, being men, 15 or 20% being men. Afterwards, they opened it again, and another 100-something thousand people responded to it, which drowned out the male voices of the consultation, and which included a lot of emotion into the consultation that was stoked up by the media. After that happened, now a couple of days ago, this poor guy that shot 5 people and himself was immediately labeled as an incel. Incels were therefore called a terrorist organization, and they immediately talked about how they have to cramp down on online misogyny. And I already know that they're going to put misogyny into the domestic abuse bill. Luckily, the violence against women and girls consultation or strategy is already out, so they can't cramp it in that anymore. But they will fight for a misogyny hate crime bill. And now what's happening in Afghanistan will be used by the UN, by UN Women, to ramp up even more stuff in regards to so-called women's rights. So they're in absolute overdrive they just take every chance to ramp up women's issues left, right, and center. And there is no stopping. There's no stopping.
But here's something to bring this kind of thread back to the original purpose of our conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Lauren Southern tweeted that she can't stand most of the manosphere, and went on to say, "Get out while you can, save yourselves, young men." I think that will have 2 potential outcomes, and I think one is that she will warn men away from taking too much of an interest in their inalienable rights that they deserve as human beings and owe to their children to secure. But I also think that it will potentially irritate men who may already have some disaffection towards women, bearing in mind this is a woman who most of us thought was kind of on our side. And so it will increase any misogyny that is in, attendance in the manosphere, whatever that is.
I
was-
agree.
What's up?
If I might, I was surprised that this fucking mental patient in Plymouth killed all these people.
I thought you meant Lauren
he-
Southern.
No.
I didn't mean, I wouldn't have laughed at you.
Yeah. I was
But
smiling
I mean,
because of that Lauren
this
Southern.
is crazy, isn't it? Some guy, some mental fucking patient in Plymouth. He's an incel. He's an evil. What is this? Really?
I mean, yeah, go on.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, please.
Is he a mental patient? Yes, but I have to say I feel nothing but sadness about the case, and I would love to turn back time and give him a fucking hug and try to get him out of his depression and his suffering, so that and probably get him out of his house.
Exactly. What would Lauren Southern's tweet have done to his mental state that morning? Whereas what could she have said?
Yeah.
Because, we all know surely that you walk past a stranger on the street and they smile at you versus you walk past a stranger on the street and they give you a dirty look can alter your state of mind for a period of time. And so this kind of demonization of people who I assume by manosphere, she does just mean people who are concerned about men's social status and social conditions and whatever. Like, to demonize all of us and all of them, bearing in mind that many of these men might have been badly, badly burned by women who have been scheming and malevolent and enabled by corrupt, sexist systems, legal systems. What does that do to their mental state to read this kind of shit from people, especially who they've hitherto thought were allies?
Right.
They are pushed more and more towards the outskirts, and I think that is unfortunately the time that we're living in. I think we live in a time that is pushing people more and more to the extremes, till this society will break, unfortunately.
Well, one thing I wanted to add to those two possible outcomes that you said, Elizabeth, is that, well, maybe we can offer that third one, in which, how do we put it? It's like, we don't have to stop talking about men's issues for being men's issues, because the only way you're going to get people to listen is for us to stop backing down and stop, kind of adapting to that zeitgeist and trying to shut ourselves up. But at the same time, it's like we can tell the truth instead of just being the caricature that they want us to be, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but
be the bigger man, and the aggressor sets the terms of the battle, but we respond, we take the high horse.
Sure, yeah.
Which isn't, I don't think I think it's reasonable advice for people who are seasoned veterans and leaders of the movement. I don't think it's necessarily I mean, it's advice I'd like to give to people who have just recently been burned and they've recently realized how unjust our societies are and they have the red pill rage. You know, I'd like them to internalize that message, but it kind of pisses me right off that they should, because women aren't held to that standard. If women want to be angry because of Sarah Everard, then we reopen the violence against women and girls debate, you know.
If I might add that, and the tragedy that was Sarah Everard, we all understand that, right? Nobody's disagreeing that it was something good. As the media, oh, you think it's good because you're an incel. Bullshit. There were like 23 or 24 murders in England that same week. Nobody said a fucking thing. Wonder why that is.
Well, I think it's not only because she was a woman, I think it also hit a nerve because of the accused.
Mm-hmm.
No.
No, because we talk, we teach our children. I teach my sons that if they're in trouble, seek out the police. And there is this question mark
the
over
story,
whether he used his authority
the
as a
story already
policeman.
the story already blew up before it was clear who the
Oh yeah,
potential
no, I'm
perpetrator
not disputing that the fact she's a woman had no influence on it. I'm suggesting that there was more.
There's
I
more added to it, you mean?
I think I'm more cynical in that regard. I think that, as I said before, I think that they wanted their female George Floyd to push a certain agenda, especially in regards to the domestic abuse bill that was and the violence against women and girls, which were going through the House of Lords and at that time. And I really
Yeah.
think they were like, this is our chance. And they, unfortunately, the feminist machine of these organizations, they have so much funding, they have all the contacts. They said, okay, write the letters now. They sent out the letters to all the outlets. It was everywhere. There was no stopping. And the fact that it was a police officer in some ways actually helped us, because it took the narrative away from evil men to the police. So actually,
Yeah.
the fact that he was a police officer helped us in many ways, because the narrative changed to, can we trust the police?
Okay.
I don't know if it really let men off the hook there. I don't know.
Yeah, a few things. I mean, first thing, I find it distasteful, although I see your point when you refer to her as a female George Floyd, because she was entirely innocent.
What was she
And
wearing? No, just kidding. That was a bad joke. No, that was a joke. That was a joke.
yeah, you know,
But
like, I
no,
mean, and also,
look,
it's like,
no. The reason why I call her a female George
no, I
Floyd
get it. I get
is
it.
not because their situations were comparable, but them being used by lobby
Yes.
groups was
They were
comparable.
weaponized in the
Yes.
same way. They were
Yes.
absolutely weaponized in the same way. And, you know, your point about the mobility of the weaponization through the contacts and the money and the lobbying power that feminists have is absolutely spot on. You know, they are gatekeepers, and you know, we spoke earlier for the International Conference on Men's Issues, Mike Buchanan and I, with you, Philip, and I believe he mentioned the Spectator advert that we wanted to publish. And so the Spectator is a sort of slightly right of centre ostensibly quite free speech media, like mainstream publication in the UK. And yet, in terms of gender politics, they have an incredibly extensive history of publishing the most radical feminists saying the most horrible lies about male violence against females.
Mm.
And so we offered them £7,000 if they would publish a one-page advert from us with some statistics on domestic violence, which are all, evidence-based. And they refused, and they didn't tell us why. But would they have refused a feminist organisation who wanted to publish statistics on male violence against female victims? I mean, I don't know, because they never told us why, but I kind of tend to doubt it. And there is a really disturbing and not functional kind of disparity between our treatment and responses to women and men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that Lauren Southern's tweet is emblematic of that, as far as I can see.
One thing I'll say is that, I'm going to make a separate video on the subject all on its own. So I'll probably articulate my thoughts well there, but, it does seem like, to kind of backtrack and answer some questions about why she did it. Well, it's one of those convenient things, she will get good hits for herself, I think. So that could be reason alone. We Nick before he left had a lot of good examples about, making, supposedly making some connections with MRAs only to slander them like by a factor of 200 later, so there's a lot of gain to be had superficially to kind of make these kind of blanket statements, because it's not nearly as, how do I put it? I almost want to say money making, but it's like really gain,
Politically
socially
efficient.
Yeah, I suppose so. To be ardently in support of some, men's issues, bring awareness to men's issues, that sort of thing. So, in a way, she's kind of not that much better than Chloe Roma, honestly, because she knows she's going to get high off the white knights that are going to completely agree with her. I think, so, and that might be motivation enough. Maybe she was just really horny for white knights or something. But it's like that's just the kind of thing we see all the time. So I don't know. That's a bit of a hot take, but
I wouldn't take what the three ladies said too much too hard, and I would try to reach out to them in the near future and say, hey, come on. I think maybe you need to meet a couple of people to make your claims. We're the good guys here.
Yeah, but that's why people are hurt by Lauren Southern, because she did work with Nick Redding, she did work with Karen Strawn.
Yeah, but
she did speak to Paul Elan.
Yeah, but that's been a while, and things are changing, and things can get hurt very, very quickly. I've seen some really nice YouTubers in the last couple of months, like really fighting against each other over small comments and misunderstandings. And I was like, come on, you should have just talked to each other, because in the end we're all on the same side, even if we have disagreements. But because they made it public, it became a huge thing where the supporters of both sides participated in the fight, which definitely did not make it easier for everybody to just calm down and say,
Yeah,
sorry,
no, that's a good point. That does
it was a
happen.
misunderstanding. There was, oh, what's her name? Carolyn Cara.
Was it Carolyn Fleck?
No, it's
No?
a YouTuber, a woman. She looks very lefty, and she is originally very lefty. Calls herself a libertarian now. She is a strong defender of the Mises caucus from the Libertarian Party in
Oh, the Mises
America.
Caucus. Yeah.
The Mises caucus in America. So she defended them, and there was a black YouTuber, a very conservative black YouTuber, and he made a comment about her, not really knowing her. I know that's slightly different situation. And there was this big bitch slap fest going on between the two of them. And in the end, it was really just like he didn't know who she was. He made a wrong assessment, and it all blew up in public when they really should just have sat down and said, look, actually, you got it wrong. And they sorted it out, but only after it became a huge public display of hurt feelings. So I would appeal to less hurt feelings and just say, okay, come on, that was a stupid thing to say, but we still love you. I still love all these ladies. They're doing a good thing, and if they slam the manosphere ones, they're still the better 10% out there. So, and with that being said, I'm gonna go to bed because it's 2:15 and I have to get up at 7 o'clock. So good night, everybody.
All right.
Sounds like an Irishman who doesn't know how to drink. What's going on there, Philip?
He's a German Scot.
I'm a German Scot.
Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds good.
And next time I'm gonna drink with you guys.
Yeah, and really, he's going to take some smack, as Scots do. He was drinking Tennants earlier, so I know it's got in him.
See you guys. Bye.
All right. See you.
Night.
All right, everyone. Elizabeth, good to see you. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
See you, Hamster. Good to meet you.
Talk to you next time. Vernon, yeah, let's do a live stream one of these days, all right?
Sure. We'll try and set something up.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome.
Thank you, Elizabeth,
Thanks.
for being here, because she's prettier than you. Sorry.
I don't think so.
See you later.
Night.
All right. See you. You know, there's more to say, but if you want to like cap it off here.
Well, I mean, I think what Philip was saying at the end there had some validity. I think that there should be much more taking a curious stance in our society generally. And so, you know, what we have is this cancel culture of finding a tweet that has a word that we don't approve of anymore from 10 years ago and saying that's unacceptable, this person must be ostracized.
Well, I have a counter to that.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that I'm trying to cancel Lauren or any of these people. It's just
No.
saying this was pretty of a hot take on your part. So here's why you're wrong. You know, reconsider, please. You know, so
Yeah.
I think that's my approach to this sort of thing.
And I think my final point is that, you know, where she says here that criticizing feminism is perfectly fine, you can do that without hating women. I do know what she's talking about. I've seen it. I've seen people who, could ostensibly be called of the manosphere, conflating women with feminism. And I
Well,
think it's ill-judged, but I just wonder whether she's ever treated people doing that with a little bit of sympathy and compassion and awareness that perhaps they're not quite as sophisticated as her.
yeah, like, I mean, I understand that, and it's, I'll try to give her the benefit of the doubt here, though it does seem like, criticize them, please. It's okay to criticize them, just not us, because we're never wrong. Look, like, maybe I'm just being really kind of.
Well, no, I mean, you're right. I mean, when she talks about, her conservatism, like, I do think that her conservatism is gynocentric. I do.
Oh yeah, it is for
And I
sure.
don't think that it's progressive. I think we can build way past that and have a much better society
Yeah,
than one built on her idea of
yeah,
conservative family Christian values, to be perfectly honest.
right. Like, she's been pretty consistent about this gynocentrism thing too. There's like another incident that Peter Wright showed me, that didn't kind of get quite as blown up as this one, but it's when she kind of made some crack about men kind of caring for children, I suppose. Basically she was basically saying, does it make me a man hater that I don't want men like actually like caring for a bunch of children or something like that? And like Peter was pissed and
You're
justifiably.
kidding.
Yeah, sure. Like
Said that.
yeah. I mean, yeah, there was that. I meant to kind of do like a follow-up interview with Peter and kind of talk about, men actually caring for children. But
I mean,
it's like,
that's disgusting.
yeah, like,
That's a genuinely disgusting thing to say. That's far worse than what she's
well,
said that's prompted this conversation, in my
yeah, well,
opinion.
like I just didn't know if I should bring it up like immediately. I mean, not all said and done now, but maybe in my video I can kind of bring that up. And man, I mean, yeah, like Peter was like hopping mad about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I might have the screenshots, or I can ask Peter again. But um, maybe I'll let you know about what she actually said at the time. But yeah, this is not the first time she's demonstrated some really misandric ass ideas about, well, just general misandric ass ideas. So, God, yeah. All right.
Oh, good to talk.
Absolutely. It's been too long. You've been too busy. Let's just say that. All right. Well, I guess we'll cap it off. I'm just, it's 8 here, but I'm probably just as tired as you are over there. So, all right. Well, take care. Okay. Thanks for this video.
Yeah, and thanks to you.
Sure. All right. Take care.
Night.
Bye bye.